All right, thanks, Jill, and thanks everybody for attending. I know late July with the nice summer weather and everything, probably not always the type of thing everybody wants to hear about is IT stuff. So hopefully you find this information informative today. You'll see my contact information here. Make sure that if you have any questions after today's presentation, you have my email address here, or reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to chat more about anything regarding IT management, security risks, stuff like that. So today we're going to talk about sort of life after lockdown, so IT and security management. We're kind of in I'll go right to the intro here. The world has permanently changed. Now it's late July. Obviously, I think it's fair to say that we're in a better position than when we were in before as a society. Obviously access to the vaccine, hospitalizations are down, everything. People are starting to trickle back into the office a little bit. But it's not like everything's just going to run back and be the same way it was in February 2020. The world's just permanently changed. Even before the pandemic, we saw a rise in the adoption of cloud hosting as well as software as a service, where organizations, especially smaller businesses with needs that were obviously similar to other businesses, other organizations, they would adopt services like Microsoft Office 365 or SharePoint or Salesforce or QuickBooks Online or any number of CRM applications, all available on the web. Or they would take their electronic medical record system and they might host it with a third party that specializes in hosting EMR so that they can get all of their stuff out of their network closet. I mean, this was already happening. Work from home is now an expectation. So I think one thing we have to grasp is that whether or not we have a policy to return people to the office, and like at DP Solutions, pretty much everybody comes into the office at least a little bit, there's still an expectation in the broader business community that people are going to want to work from home in the future, that this hybrid workforce is going to be a thing into the future. A lot of businesses are using it as a competitive advantage to recruit people. Sometimes the talent we need isn't available where we are. I mean, a number of businesses, even us, we've made hires out of state because the right person that we wanted was located not in Maryland. Ransomware attacks are very much on the rise. So, I mean, ransomware existed before the pandemic, but now that we're sort of reopening, ransomware is even worse. Our workforces are decentralized. People are, the attacks are lucrative for these bad guys, and it's cheap to do and easy to implement. So these attacks, there's nothing really stopping them from happening, unfortunately. There's also now bring your own device, BYOD, and / device agnosticism. So really, the expectation today is that people should be able to use their home PC of any kind. They should be able to use their iPad, their work laptop, their cell phone, no matter whether it's an Android or an iPhone or even a BlackBerry, if you happen to have one of those. That all of these tools, no matter what they are, as long as they're fairly modern, they should be able to work with your product. And indeed, that's the case most of the time. There is very little technical specification needed for a lot of the business applications that we use today. There's an expectation of digital interaction from customers and partners. So I very much enjoy meeting people in person, doing phone calls. Only recently have I been going out and doing some of the networking things and face-to-face interactions that I was accustomed to pre-pandemic. And yes, it's very weird for me getting back into that. But I think now there's an expectation that if somebody wants to have a meeting with you to talk about long-term strategy and you can't get together in the office, that there's an expectation that you should be able to get on your computer, look somebody in the face using a webcam, have a microphone set up, have a good conference call, be able to share your screen, do all the stuff completely digitally. You don't have an excuse now if somebody wants to have a meeting in short notice that you can't prepare some kind of digital presentation for them really from no matter where you are. So we're just more dependent on technology than before the pandemic while also being under more threat. So we're working in different places, we're doing different things, there's more threats, we're more reliant on technology, And where does this leave us? We're going to talk about that today. IT and security management must be prioritized as a business operation function. So I think a lot of people in the past looked at the computers that they purchased, the solutions that they pay for monthly, that they pay us either a subscription fee or some kind of agreement fee on. They look at security stuff, all these other items as costs to the business, but really, IT is an operation of the organization, and IT success equals business success, and vice versa. You can't, even if you have a great product or service, you could be a terrific lawyer, or manufacture the best sprocket, or be an amazing nonprofit that does a great mission for the community. But if your IT isn't operating correctly, your business, your goals will not be met. I mean, that's just the reality of 2021. So today we're going to talk about how shifts in the world, including the pandemic, have sort of impacted how we approach IT and security management. And so we're going to talk about a few things. First is, what does a reopened business do differently that we have to adjust for? So now that we're having sort of a sense of normalcy, what's different? What should we consider for staff working outside the office to achieve technology success? So, speaking for myself, I'm mostly coming to the office on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and usually working from home Tuesday, Thursday. Obviously, that varies a lot for me. For me, I need specific things to be able to work successfully no matter where I am. You need to start thinking about that for your staff too. Where do they work? How do they work? And what's going to make them successful? We need to talk about security training in the post-COVID world. So I know I'm feeling this in terms of my security awareness training. There's a greater desire and need than ever before to teach a staff about the various threats that are out there, because we don't necessarily control all the devices they touch. We don't necessarily have visibility on them all the time, and their actions, no matter where they are, could impact our data privacy. We're going to talk about lifecycle strategy considerations. So now that we're in this world where people are working in different places at different times and in different ways, how does that impact how often we replace our PCs, or where we target, when we target network replacements, or how much bandwidth do we need, those sorts of questions. Another subject I want to get into is identifying the new attack surface with hybrid office work from home. And by attack surface, I mean all the various areas where we could be attacked. Traditionally in an office environment, the attack surface is primarily the office. So all the PCs, the people working there, the server closets, and maybe some SaaS applications or cloud hosts. Now the attack surface is really spread to people's homes, to hotels, airports, coffee shops, etc. And of course, Q&A. I'm not going to get into everything in 40 some minutes about how things have changed. So I certainly welcome your questions and hope to address them. So how have we changed as an operation? Technology is a tool to make a business more efficient, but if it's not applied properly, you can't benefit from it. There are some really amazing applications out there, really amazing products, and the difference between success and failure is picking the right tools and services, and also making sure they fit your business and are adopted properly. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves, give me 1 second here, is staff. So where do they work? What do they use, and what have been their challenges during the lockdown? I think we could all look back at the last year and a half or so and say, our staff, the majority of them have been working in these locations. They've been using their home PCs, or they've been using company-issued devices or mobile phones. And what have their challenges been? I know one thing that frustrates me sometimes is when people are trying to have a meeting and they can't get their microphone working. And I know that seems small, but I know that bothers me, and it probably bothers some customers too. Some people have a challenge having access to information fast enough. This document, the service they're trying to get access to, for some reason when they're working from home, it just takes forever, but it works really well in the office. We need to identify these workflow challenges and what our staff is actually doing. So if you haven't really done a staff survey yet and gone back and said, hey, it's I guess you could say August 2021, and we're looking to adjust our business and adapt for the new reality of work. What have your experiences been? Where have things been challenging for you? How can we help? I mean, we have to go direct to the source. With customers, we're going to ask a lot of the same questions that we would ask our staff, what their challenges have been, except it's more about how we provide value. During during the lockdown, what was the experience like working with us? Was it difficult for us to have a virtual meeting? Were we able to communicate with you fast enough? Do you feel like you still got the same level of service even though perhaps you're doing something virtually? These are all sort of fundamental questions as opposed to technology questions. What's their experience been like? How can we make it better? And where do we need to adapt? Resources and profitability. I mean, this has to be a question for pretty much every business now when it comes to technology planning into the future. DP Solutions is an IT services company. You know, obviously we've had to adapt to deal with it, but we were already sort of prepared to work remotely. We already did things like remote access into people's PCs to provide service to them. We already did things like have some allowances for work from home. However, we did have to deal with challenges like clients who were facing severe business problems that would impact how they would respond to our invoices and things like that. Maybe you're in a business that is heavily service-based and you took a little bit of a hit over the past year because you couldn't open in the same way. It's time to have an actual business discussion and say, have our actual resources changed? Are we not as profitable? And where can we utilize technology to either make more money or cut back our costs? Finally, there's compliance and legal landscape. So that's also changed considerably, especially with security. So if you're in a, for example, infrastructure related industry, you know, the impact of Colonial Pipeline is going to start trickling downstream when it comes to what you need to do to protect your stuff and be in alignment with the law. That's happening not just in infrastructure-based businesses, but also government contractors. It's going to happen more with professional services businesses. Excuse me. It's already happening in the medical field. It's been happening for years. Financial services as well. But I think it's going to start really seeping into anybody who really takes private information and shares it. So consider where your compliance standards and where your legal liabilities may have changed over the last 18 months. Working outside the office. So in addition to work from home, I think what we can expect in general, more travel. So conferences and vacations, as well as the fact that we have people now who simply may have places that they work that are non-traditional. It's not unheard of that people now have summer homes that they work out of entirely, or people who relocated during the pandemic and they worked first 20 minutes from your office and now they're in a whole other state. I mean, that's very normal stuff these days. What local infrastructure do my staff work in, and what control do we have over those networks? So when I say local infrastructures, I'm asking what's it like in their house? Do they have a whole bunch of PCs set up? Do a lot of my people live in apartment complexes, or do they live in rural areas where maybe there's a limitation on the amount of internet connections they can get? Perhaps they have to use things like satellite internet connections or use a cellular hotspot to get access to internet. We need to ask those kinds of questions. You know, where are people actually working, and what resources do they have access to? Furthermore, we can even go further. Are people starting to use things? Are my team a bunch of people who are really technology averse and they just use a laptop and that's it in their homes? Or are these people on my staff the types who are going to get all sorts of weird smart, refrigerators and smart TVs and thermostats and things, and now their environment has a bunch of devices that need to be maintained, otherwise they're sharing the same networks as my sensitive data. So we need to start asking questions like, what's happening in people's homes and what control do we have? It's going to impact how we put in security solutions on devices and data. How effective are we at performing maintenance on devices and staff that are not centrally located? So if I've got somebody, let's get back to that rural example. They're working out of a farmhouse that's 2 hours from my office, and we don't have a very fast internet connection. Are we making sure that the device that they're using is still getting patches and updates? Are we able to ensure that when an application needs to be installed or changed, that we're able to do so effectively? Or are we having a hard time with this? If so, we need to change our plan up a little bit and address that. I mentioned this a little bit before. What kind of internet connections do we have access to, and what limitations are on them? So there's two ways of looking at this. The first is, if you're located near a major metropolitan area, chances are you're able to get a fairly high-speed internet connection with little difficulty. Now, there's some exceptions to this. Certain areas, for whatever reason, Verizon and Comcast and other ISPs don't talk to very well. Maybe the local geography or cabling is insufficient. But for the most part, if you're in a major city, you should have access to a suitable internet connection to handle most business functions. However, if you're out there in a rural area, that just may not be the case, or you may have access to something that's just much slower. The other piece you're starting to see a lot more is bandwidth caps. So some individuals, and not everybody, but some individuals will have internet connections where you're only allowed to download so many gigabytes per month. This is especially important if you have a 4G or 5G cellular connection. Excuse me, I can't say cellular today. And these are often will have things like maybe 5 to 10 gigabyte data caps, which if you're transferring Word files is fine, but if you're starting to stream video or higher end media or anything like that, or you're consistently taxing that internet connection, may not be enough to get things done. So consider that as well. If people are using a lot of cellular connections, it may be a challenge to transfer too much data to them. Do our staff have the basic tools they need to succeed outside the office? So, day to day, what do people need? In my home, for example, I have a desktop PC with multiple monitors, which is something I use not just for presentations like this, but for things like phishing testing, which allows me to see results as I'm writing a new test, or have my email on one screen while I'm doing my meeting in another. I need that sort of setup for what I do. I have a printer that I can use so that if I'm about to do a meeting out of the office and I need to print something out for that meeting, I have access to that. I have a good wireless connection throughout my home. I have a decent tablet and smartphone that gets work done. Maybe your people need things like scanners or good webcams. They do tons and tons of virtual meetings, and so having a high fidelity picture of them would be useful. Or having a high quality microphone. Now, right now, I'm doing this with I guess it's a Blue Yeti microphone in my office, so I get a nice clear sound without a lot of interference. At my home, I have a Blue Snowball microphone, and so I'm able to broadcast and have really good audio quality. I would really recommend that, making that kind of investment if you think you're going to do a whole lot of meetings outside the office. Now's the time to ask. I realize there's an electronic shortage, a chip shortage, but we can still get most things that people need one way or the other, or at least we can start identifying what they need. So if we have to wait a little while, we can at least be prepared for that. How reliable have our core systems been over the past year with non-traditional work? So I asked this question because a lot of people got by during the pandemic, but in a non-ideal way. We had a lot of clients early March, late February, who anticipated COVID being having an impact on their business, and so they were doing things like enabling go to my PC on their PCs at work to get things done. And that may have been functional, but slow or not ideal or not secure enough or whatever. Just because things were technically functioning doesn't mean that they were ideal. And so I think we owe ourselves a real assessment and ask, when people are working remotely, how seamless has that transition been? I feel like for me, it's been pretty decent. But I think for a lot of people, it's been a real struggle. So it's worth asking that question and getting honest answers. Without us asking any of these questions, I keep saying bring up questions. If we don't know the answers to these questions, we're not going to be able to develop a strategy into the future. And notice that almost all of these questions have been more about how people work and what their experiences and feelings have been. They haven't really been about how fast things are. Security awareness training post-COVID. So I mentioned that your staff can be a security asset or a liability. People who don't care about what they click on, who are oblivious to the ideas of spoofing or social engineering or phishing, are basically ticking time bombs. These people will inevitably be exploited, and you will face some kind of consequence. And hopefully these consequences are minor, but as you've seen from the news, oftentimes these consequences can be entire systems that are failed, $1 million plus ransoms, media awareness and publication, embarrassment, stuff like that. So the need to train our staff has really never been greater. It all depends on what you give them. Phishing is still the #1 threat. I mean, I have clients who ask me about high-end security solutions, and I endorse a lot of these higher-end security solutions like SIEMs and SOC solutions. I'm about to publish an article about the use of SIEM and SOC in an office environment. But the truth is that if you're not really teaching your people about these threats that impact them, it's going to be hard for SIEMs and SOCs to do everything that you would want them to do. And phishing is really still the #1 threat. It's where most ransomware attacks come from. It's where most scams come from. It's how most credentials are compromised. It's how information is stolen and put on the dark web. And so if people don't know what phishing is, how they can fight back against it, how to communicate things, you need to get on that. It's really important. It's a service we offer, phishing testing and security awareness training. You don't have to go through us, of course, but I would really recommend that be on your radar. Everybody needs it. Data regulations continue to evolve. So it's important that staff knows what is sort of sensitive or liable for the business and be trained specifically on the handling of that data. So anything having to do with personal identification, names, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, bank account numbers, wiring information, insurance information, healthcare information, sensitive processes or procedures that are private, trade secrets, etc. We need to, again, have proper data classification so we know what stuff is sensitive to our organization and what laws we need to abide by. Based on the types of laws that we need to, based on the types of data that we need to protect or what is sensitive to us, that could put us under any number of regulations or compliance standards. And so unless we've identified them, we might be running afoul of those rules. Incident reporting. You know, a lot of businesses focus on preventing stuff from happening, you know, getting the right, you know, endpoint detection solutions or making sure people know what a phishing thing is, but they don't know what to do when they're in the midst of an attack. Something weird's happening on a device. Do people know how to reach their IT service provider or their IT department? Do they know how to escalate to their manager? Do they know not to mess with things themselves and start trying to fix things or cover something up? Do they know that they should maybe take some notes about what was happening at the time so that, you know, when they are reporting on this stuff that they can say, well, I was doing this, this, and this, and you should know that so that you know what path you should go down, stuff like that. If you don't know how to report an incident, you're going to have a much worse consequence as a result. And we could save a lot of money and heartache if we report our incidents properly. There's other things like acceptable use, approved devices, and other items regarding the ground use. The ground rules of technology. So people need to understand everything that's correct and approved, and as well as everything that they're not allowed to do when it comes to the use of technology and company data. So they should understand on their PCs what they are allowed to do as it pertains to installing things, which generally people shouldn't be doing. They should understand if they're going to use a personal device that they need to allow the company to have some kind of management over that personal device so that it gets patches, updates, that it doesn't sideload bad applications that can steal our information, so on and so forth. They need to know the acceptable channels. So if you're going to send a social security number for a client to a third party, that is an approved thing, that you're allowed to do that. You're doing it through the channels that the company has agreed to, that channel is secure, that it's documented, all that stuff. If you just sort of give people the keys of the car and let them drive with it, then who knows where they're going to go on the road. They need to know all the rules of the road first. Life cycle. So it used to be that in every 4 to 5 years we would replace a server or PC, and now the conversation is a little more complicated. So you know, I started in the MSP space in 2005, and it would be that, you know, 4 or 5 years, pretty much the useful life of a PC, it would start getting slow. You'd start seeing parts degrade. You would start seeing things like, you know, the operating system is no longer supported by the manufacturer. And, you know, just a great example would be the Microsoft Office product. I think we had, if I'm remembering correctly, there was Office 2000, Office 2003, Office 2008, I think, Office 2010, Office 2013. And every time they would do one of these iterations, there would be file compatibility issues as they went to XLSX format and all this other stuff. And the point was that in order for you to stay up, you had to meet a certain baseline. You can't have Office 2003 anymore. It doesn't support XLM or whatever. And so you have to move these things. Things have changed though, and now we have to look at it a little bit differently. First is the subscriptions and agreements with cloud SaaS and service providers. If you go into Microsoft Office 365 and you get one of the better plans that includes the Office subscription, and you get your mail through it, and you get maybe Active Directory or OneDrive or some of these other products, we're all of a sudden simplifying a lot of our lifecycle strategy stuff. We don't have to think about, well, the file server that we're using is 4 or 5 years old. The hard drives are going to start failing. We're going to have to address the RAID array. The motherboard might fail because this server's been on 24/7. The power supply could die any minute now. All these sorts of things, just because of the age of hardware, those things kind of go away because now we're farming that off to a third party in the example Microsoft. Not only that, there's other potential benefits to this as well. I'm going to be putting something together about our position on Windows 11, which is coming into the future. But in general, these operating systems, Windows 10 is becoming a lot more like Mac OS X, where in general you buy the core product, the Windows 10 or the Windows 11. It's going to be out there in the wild a lot longer, but with big feature updates, right? And updates that are more compatible with more devices. So it's not necessarily the age of the device that matters. Is it staying up to the subscription, the currently supported OS that is published by the provider? Everything is really going to the subscription model when it comes to software, and that's really impacting lifecycle strategy. Our budget is going to be a little bit more predictable, and we're going to have lower capital expense. However, we're probably just going to have more of those monthly costs. I think in the end, it's probably better. It makes things a little bit simpler and easier to plan for. But every decision, look, these decisions really are going to vary from business to business, individual to individual in terms of how they manage it. Software and vendor support will drive replacement more than hardware failure. So it's pretty easy generally to replace a PC or a laptop. If you're using SaaS or cloud-based solutions to host things, maybe you have 1 or 2 applications that have to be installed on a PC. Maybe that's what you do. And you have a standard configuration or something like that, or you need to get their Outlook configured or whatever. These things are not a big deal to do on a PC. And so if a PC dies, yeah, it's annoying, but you can generally, load up and get a new PC ready to go pretty quickly in a non-complicated setup. It used to be that every business, and I'm harkening back to that 2005, 2010 era, where before we were really seeing cloud SaaS adoption the way we are today, where, okay, well, a new PC has got to get QuickBooks, it's got to get the CRM, it's got to get Outlook, it's got to get our SQL database on it, and it's got to get this, this, and this. And you'd have a PC setup that would take 6 or 7 hours to get to install all of these applications. It's generally gotten a lot simpler than that. And I say generally because there is no absolutes here. Infrastructures have often been neglected, but can strongly impact how a cloud solution performs or how many devices can connect. So it seems to me, and just my overall sense is that it was easy to make a case to somebody that the server is old. It's 4 or 5 years old, the thing's acting a little bit slow, people feel it, people see it, they touch it, they see the lights on it. I guess it's just this big hulking thing, and people would be very enthusiastic about replacing it. And then infrastructure stuff like cabling in the walls, or the Wi-Fi that people were using, or the network switches, they would be secondary to most people. Now, really, these should all come at once. You really should be keeping a standard for everything. But these things would naturally get neglected because they don't necessarily feel the pain that the servers would. But now it's going to kind of flip a little bit, because not having a sufficient internet connection or good enough bandwidth on your network or good enough cabling in the wall, that's going to impact how fast it is to stream data from some cloud service provider, from some SaaS provider that you're relying on constantly to feed you data all the time. And so now I would say that if you don't have a really good gigabit network set up, or perhaps even 10 gigabit, depending on what you're doing, if you don't have good Wi-Fi that gives coverage throughout the office, and good cabling in the walls, you're basically making it so that these cloud products are kind of handicapped a little bit when it comes to giving you what you need. So we really need to go back and look, well, what's in the walls? What's the traffic like on our network? Home environments need some control to make sure devices not owned by the company are up to par. So again, it used to be the life cycle strategy was what are all the things the company owns and how often do we need to replace them? But now I think we need to go back and look every year and say, are our people in their homes, do they know that the router that's been sitting in their home for the past 10 years, the wireless device from Netgear that they've had for the past 10 years, that's running 802.11b and old protocols and poor encryption and all this other stuff, that they need to replace that. And we're going to either help them do it, or we're going to encourage them to go to Best Buy, give them an outline or something to make sure that in their homes where they're doing work on our data that we care about, that they're using decent quality equipment. You should just plan, I think, right now on expanding your security spend and tools. I think overall, the budgeting and lifecycle strategy is going to be less on capital expense and some of the more traditional expenses like physical backups, servers, laptops, switches, network devices, etc. And we're going to be spending as a whole more on things like network firewalls, endpoint data detection, SIM, SOC, encryption, phishing testing, all this other stuff. Those things are going to produce such a ROI to make sure that we avoid these security incidents. So I just feel like over time, there's going to be more demands on security and we're just going to be spending more. And I think you need to plan on that. And it's not me just saying, well, I just want to get more for your money. I mean, at the end of the day, this money goes to the vendors who are providing these products in the first place. It's more that if we don't want to be the next person to get ransomware or the next one to have an embarrassing data breach, we're just going to have to do more than we were doing in the past. I'm overall of the opinion that in the United States, that cybersecurity maturity is a little low across the board, that you have some organizations that are very proactive and very good about this, and then you have other organizations that basically have their head in the sand and that they are only going to do something when something bad happens. That's going to change over time because we're going to be forced to change it. The challenge is going to be adapting the strategy to a business that operates differently in a new work environment. So, your operation has changed. We're going to have to change our technology strategy to face the new work environment. I just think things have completely gone, given a 180. Last, before we get into the Q&A, let's just talk about the new attack surface. So think of the attack surface as our little bases that we must protect from the enemy. One is data classification and storage. So what is our data? What do we care about? How is it classified and where is it stored? Is it located in our SharePoint? Is it located on everyone's individual desktops, which I really wouldn't recommend? Is it located on a file server located in our core office? Where's the sensitive data? Is it segmented in such a way where we don't have non-sensitive data mixed with sensitive data? Or at least are they in such a way where we have like a folder for the sensitive stuff and a folder for the non-sensitive stuff? Or perhaps we have different folders based on sensitivity or some kind of structure that speaks logistically to that. This is something we need to identify right now because if we're not protecting it in our new sort of work from anywhere environment, we're going to fail to protect that information. Device management and breadth. So think about where all the devices are, what kind of devices people are using, and where they're located. I've sort of gotten into this before, so I don't think we need to belabor the point all that much. IoT. So I briefly touched on this earlier, the Internet of Things, basically anything that has an internet connection on it. And if you go into a Best Buy or not even a Best Buy, you don't even have to really go into an electronics store per se, but go into any place that has a smart device. And now this device sends and transmits data. They all travel on the same network especially on a home network, as people who are working from home, as your kids who might be playing a video game on their PlayStation or doing something on their own personal device. Every device on a network needs to be protected. We don't want a bad IoT device that is vulnerable to be an attack vector to attack our sensitive stuff. So we need to stay on top of the other devices on our network, even the ones that are non-traditional. Cloud SaaS accounts, especially administrative accounts. So I haven't really talked about multi-factor authentication. It is to me, it's a requirement on any account right now if you really want to protect that account, especially administrative stuff. If I'm a bad guy and I want to get into your stuff, if I can get into your Office 365 administrator account, now all of a sudden I have access to everything that everybody has, and I haven't even touched your Office network. I haven't even touched people's home networks. All I've done is I've compromised the credentials on your subscription. So we need to make sure that all of this stuff is addressed, that we have strong authentication on those accounts. Again, how has your operation changed? This is going to determine where your risk areas are and how to adjust your security posture. Where are people working now? How are they working differently? How is data flowing throughout your network in a different way than it was before? I can't answer these questions. I can help you apply those changes to your business and to your technology. But you're going to have to be the one that looks at the business and determines where things are good and where things are not good. And then technology experts like me or some of my colleagues or others in the community can help identify how to address these things appropriately. You don't always need cutting edge security, but the solutions you need are now different than the ones you needed before COVID. So a little bit of transparency here. My laptop is not sophisticated. I'm using a old Intel i5. It is about as plain Jane as it can come. It's got a webcam on it. It's not very good. It's not the fastest thing, but it does what I needed to do, which is I can write on it. I can do these presentations. I can hook my mic up to it. I can do phishing tests on it. I can access anything I need, and I can secure the device, and it can run all supportable stuff. That gets things done for me. I know others who feel like they need to go out and get a Core i9 brand new computer, and that's what they feel like they need. And yes, those things are going to be a little bit faster. Maybe there are applications where that stuff's really necessary. But I would rather you invest your money into multi-factor authentication, encryption, proper backups, good security, phishing testing, etc., before going with going for sexy, state-of-the-art, high-end, sophisticated technology, whether it's security or productivity stuff. Let's use our resources in a smart way, things that apply for our business rather than things that are trendy or fashionable. So just to wrap up real quick, so revisit your decisions, look at them from where you are now. COVID-19 and the new normal has changed where we work and how data flows and is stored. Ransomware threats are just worse, and phishing and social engineering is rampant. And we should really be using this time, now that things are starting to pick back up, to reassess whether your technology still fits your needs, including security, based on all of these external factors, things we haven't really controlled. Almost nothing we've talked about today has been directly about technology. It's mostly been about stepping back and saying how our business has changed, and then coming to our technology people and saying, okay, we're doing these 5 things differently, and we're using an infrastructure that was designed based on assumptions that were, or based on a reality that is not where we're at today. What do we need to do? And if you're able to have that conversation, you should be having this conversation consistently, by the way, not just with COVID-19, but just in general, because everybody's changing. If you're able to have those conversations consistently, you can really stay ahead of the trends and really adapt as opposed to start everything over from scratch all the time. Oh, there we go. So with all that said, we're ready for Q&A. While Jill gets the questions together, I'll talk really quickly about our August webinar. It's going to be on the 25th of August at 11 a.m. We're going to talk about managing a hybrid workforce. So we're going to talk we're going to talk a little bit, I mentioned briefly about tools that people need. We're going to revisit that and policies that people need to have to support a hybrid work from home and work from the office model. I'm going to talk about things like not just the technology, but cadences, things like having regular check-ins, having communication standards, identifying areas where people need to be alerted, what tools people should be using, things like that. So you can check out the link to see a brief preliminary agenda. If there's things you want to hear about for this webinar, make sure you let us know and I'll make sure we address it. I'm still working on the content. And also you can see to the left here my email address and LinkedIn information if you wish to connect with me after the webinar. So with all that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jill. Jill, do we have any questions?
Okay, yes, just as a reminder, if you have any questions, fill them out in the question box. And our first question is, are staff more likely to experience a cyber attack if they are working from home?
Sort of. So if they're working from home, the biggest problem I see is that you lack the engaged communication culture that you have when people are working right next to each other. There's no doubt that when weird stuff happens and everyone's in an office, you know, you can get up from your desk, you can walk over to somebody, and you can get their attention right away, even if they're in a meeting or something like that. And so in that sense, we're all more vulnerable because everybody has to make decisions in real time. I don't think people are necessarily targeted more working from home. You can be targeted more if you're a low-hanging fruit. And what makes somebody a low-hanging fruit? Using a device that is lacking in management. So somebody's using their home PC and that PC isn't getting touched by IT staff ever. You can be a low-hanging fruit if you're using a home router that is just old. That's a piece of junk router that uses the same device credentials that are at default that Comcast used when they installed it when you got high-speed internet 15 years ago or whatever. You can be a low-hanging fruit if you're not paying attention, right? And everybody's getting the same phishing emails and you're just distracted and you're not focused on it. That is how people who are working from home are going to get hit more. There's nothing inherently real. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of signs, but from the outside, you're just an IP address no matter where you're at. And so an attacker isn't going to necessarily know whether you're working in the office or working from home or if this is normal for you. They're just going to know if you're exploitable based on how you respond to phishing attacks or based on how well maintained your device is. So I hope that answers the question.
Yep, great, thank you. Okay, our next question come in. How fast does my work from home internet connection need to be to support both a typical household as well as one or two more people working from home?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. I say you need to have a fast internet connection, and then everybody says, we've got the fastest internet connection. We've got 100 megabits. We've got a gigabit. We've got 10 gigabits. It's amazing, and it's all just a bunch of numbers and beeps and boops, and people don't understand. It's a thing in the technology industry I think about a lot is how a lot of the people who are selling technology talk like they're talking to other nerds like me, and they don't talk to regular people who have to make the decisions. So to give you a sense of what things consume, so mega, giga. So mega is 1,000,000 bits. Giga is, I guess, 1 billion bits, if I'm saying that correctly. To give you a sense, I'm a single person. I have a girlfriend. She comes over, and we use a lot of internet bandwidth. We both at times will work from my home, so she'll be remotely connected to her job. I'll be remotely connected to my job. On a day-to-day basis, this doesn't take a whole lot of bandwidth. If you even had a 10 to 15 megabit connection, you're probably going to be in okay shape for most business functions. Email, a screen sharing thing, transferring a file, something like that, as long as the file isn't like a huge video file. That'll get the job done, but I don't recommend a 10 megabit connection. That's a little slow. I mean, it only takes a couple people doing all of those activities for things to start slowing down. It only takes 1 or 2 people to start streaming Netflix to really kill that connection or download a video game or something like that. More realistically, I would target just to start, especially if you have a flexible ISP who's willing to maybe speed things up if you're not satisfied with your first choice, somewhere at least in the 100 megabit range. If you have 100 megabits, here's what you can do. You could stream 4K Netflix, because I believe 4K Netflix is like 25 megabits per second. So someone could be streaming that, so watching a television show or something, maybe your kid's doing that. And you could have 2 people both use maybe 10 megabits at a time to do their work and consume a pretty decent amount of data at any given time. Somebody could be downloading an update to maybe someone has an iPad and they're downloading an update that updates the OS. It's a few gigabytes. Maybe someone's downloading a movie or a computer game or operating system update. I mean, the thing about 100 megabits is it gives you the bandwidth, the sort of flexibility that if more than one person is doing something at once, you're able to get sufficient data to do what you need to do in a home environment. That's not a hard and fast rule. If you've got, let's say you've got a really big home and you've got 4 kids who are all doing homeschool, some kind of homeschool or virtual schooling at once, and you've got 2 people streaming Netflix and 4 people working from home, you might consider getting a gigabit connection if it's available for you. It's like internet connections are kind of like a glass of water. It's like you can only fill them up so much before they start overflowing, and you'll get to figure that over time. If you start at 100 megabits, for most people, that's probably going to be pretty good. If you have more specific questions about this, you can reach out to me. I can give you some advice. It's all going to depend on the person. It's better to err on the side of getting more speed than less. And it's even better if your ISP can just pump you up and bring you from one tier to another. When I started working from home during the pandemic, and I know I'm rambling about this, I actually decided to make that change, and I think I went from there's a limitation. I think I went from 150 to 200 or something like that. But I just called Verizon up and said I wanted more bandwidth, and they were able to tune it up a little bit. So that helped. Any other questions, Jill?
Great. Yeah. Yeah, we have another question. You mentioned an assessment. If I haven't done an assessment recently for my technology, now that things are shifting with COVID, where should I start?
Yeah. Good question. So assessment is very broad, right? All assessment is looking at something and figuring out if it's working or not. I would recommend a few types of assessments for everybody, at least annually. The first is a security assessment. So somebody should be going in, and depending on how complicated your security needs are, you might even run a vulnerability test if necessary through a third party. But find out where the actual vulnerabilities are, where your risks are from a security perspective. Not only how well your system is maintained, but what are the gaps in terms of risk management? Do you have all the tools and services you need? I've talked about security assessments before. I'm probably going to talk about them again in future webinars. You can look at any of our content regarding that. The other assessment is more of a productivity QBR style assessment. And this is going to be focused on, is the technology doing what we need it to do, and what's on the horizon for us? For our clients that are on managed IT services, we usually try and do quarterly business reviews. Maybe that's too much for some people. Maybe biannuals is sufficient. But all a QBR should be doing is a few things. One is should be looking backwards and saying, where do we stand right now? What's good? What's bad? What's been a challenge for us, etc. You should talk about sort of the next few months and what are the things we need to do in order to avoid sort of choppy waters. Are there upgrades that we need to do? Are there security holes that we need to address right now? New vulnerabilities we need to deal with, or things that are just lacking on our system that present really major risks right this moment. And then there's sort of the long-term assessment, which is how good is our technology over 1 year and beyond? And what do we need to look at in 2022 and 2023? We're in July right now. I think if you're running a business, you should be saying at this point, what investments am I going to have to make in my technology in 2022? What are the big ones? And I'm not talking about I might need to replace 3 laptops in my network. I'm talking about we may need to migrate our email system from one solution to another. We may need to up our data, our file server, or whatever we're using as a file solution or document management solution. It's running out of space, or it's insufficient, or we're going to hit data caps or whatever, or it's whatever these problems are. Those big changes we need to start planning on now, because doing it a month out from replacement is going to lead to oversights. The bigger the more impactful the change to the system and your operation is, the more time you should plan for it up front and assess whether your technology is doing it right now. These are all very subjective ideas, and they vary from person to person, organization to organization. If you don't feel or you haven't had this conversation, I think the first step is literally just having a chat what am I concerned about? A technology professional can help walk you through what a good assessment procedure is. I certainly can give you some advice on that myself. So anything else, Jill?
Nope, I don't see any more questions coming in.
All right, great. Well, I'll wrap it up then. Thanks everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone's enjoying their summer, staying cool out there, or you know, all the various stuff with the weather. Obviously, the weather's been really bizarre in certain parts of the country. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you check out our webinar in August. Reach out to me if you have any questions, LinkedIn, email, whatever. Thanks so much and take care. Bye-bye.